morning. Good to see everybody here. I have the distinct honor of being the moderator of this panel. We at Accel are very, very fortunate to be investors in Dovetail. But in our past, we were also, or today, we're still investors in Sprig. And previously, we were investors in user testing and UserZoom. And then in our past, long ago, we were formerly investors in Qualtrics. So we're deep, deep believers in this space and the importance of research. And we're going to talk about how user experience research is changing with the advent of AI today. I just have to say briefly that I started my career as a brand manager at Procter & Gamble at a galaxy far away, very long time ago. And we had none of these amazing tools that we're going to be talking about here today. Back then, to do any form of basic quant research took 6 months to sort of set up, organize, and analyze in sort of a batch process. So it is light years difference in terms of what the modern tools that are available today. Why don't we just start out? I'm not sure that everyone knows sort of the latest update of what each of your companies do. Could you just talk a little bit about what is most the overall description of the company, and what would you describe as the most distinctive?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I can introduce myself very quickly as well. So Joey Levsky, I'm a researcher by trade. So before Maze, I was leading design and research in some of the best agencies in Paris. My job was terrible. It consisted of going to clients and saying, you have two options. You can build the wrong thing right now, and it's going to take 2 weeks, or we can figure out what to build in the next 3 months by running extensive user interviews and then getting a report out, and then finally for you to decide what to build. That tension that exists between the speed at which companies build and the speed at which companies learn is not unique to agencies. It's something that every product organization has experienced. I'm sure everyone here has experienced that. That is the problem that we're trying to solve. We believe that companies shouldn't have to choose between building fast and building right. And we built a platform that allows organizations to have access to user insights at the speed of product development. And so we do that through democratization, helping more people get access to both the insights, but also run the practice of research. And we've been doing that for 7 years, so we're amazed.
Great.
Awesome.
Right.
I'm Ryan Glasgow, the founder and CEO of Sprig, and my background's previously in product management. And what I noticed as a product manager at Weebly and many other tech companies here in San Francisco is the pace of product development is moving faster and faster every year. And how can research keep pace with the pace of product development? And at the time, the research team was using Qualtrics and sending out 20 to 50 question surveys on a quarterly basis. And how can we really take survey and quantitative research and integrate it into the product development lifecycle and really bring it into the modern pace of product development? And so started Sprig, and we're now the leader in-context research for many of the fastest growing tech companies like Notion, Ramp, Coinbase, Robinhood, just to name a few. And recently we've expanded into behavioral insights, so session replay, heat maps, as well as feedback modules. And so if you use tools like Notion and Robinhood, then we are helping their research team with insights and powering part of their growth.
Thank you, Ryan. Alfonso?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alfonso Dilanuez. I'm ex-co-founder at UserZoom. UserZoom started in 2007 as a platform to help scale research. Before UserZoom, I co-founded a usability testing consultancy, and we spent a good 7 years in a physical lab testing with users in a very different way than what Ben showed this morning. Very, very different. And that led us to really, like I always say, as an entrepreneur, you have to fall in love with the problem or with the opportunity. And what we wanted to do was be more efficient and scale user research. We felt that it was extremely valuable to organizations. We're talking 2007, so long time ago. And UserZoom, grew to be this kind of remote online, or as I like to call it, a lab in the cloud, right? Automated, scalable way to do research. We never thought it would get this big as this market is getting. We were just chatting about it, but scaled it thanks to some really good enterprise accounts and teams that really believed in research and insights to make decisions, to make product decisions, right? To develop and design, develop and deliver great digital experiences. And then in 2022, we were doing really, really well. So UserZoom got acquired by a private equity investor called Thoma Bravo, which is one of the leading private equity investors, big investors that like to buy companies that are already mature enough and have a chance to continue growing. And one of the theses was, hey, if we also buy user testing, then we put them together and it becomes a really powerful player. And that's what they did. That was in 22, 23. I left the company and kind of been enjoying life for about a year or so, but then I decided to come back and help out the team, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm an advisor to the user testing team. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, guys. Well, let's just start up by talking about just the AI trend for a second. Maybe the first question I just want to ask is, this is, I think many would argue this is an even bigger trend than mobile or any of the previous trends that have changed the nature of research. Maybe a question I didn't expect to ask is, do you think just broadly AI is underhyped or overhyped in terms of the impact on the world, in our world of research today? Jonathan, let me
Interesting.
First.
I think it's still very underhyped, especially for the world of research. I think in many ways, when people think about the impact of AI on research, they think about the tactical implementation of it. They think about, oh yeah, AI can summarize stuff and AI can create themes, and all of this is interesting, all of this is cool. But the reality is it's a much bigger shift, I think, for the market, where in a world where everyone can build anything, the only thing that matters is what you build, right? And so all of a sudden, if companies have been shaped to be time-to-market machines, right, outpush machines for the past 20 years, where the goal was how can we push stuff fast to the market to learn, all of a sudden, those things become irrelevant. It kind of commoditizes the capacity for people to build stuff. And so in that world, research, or at least insights, become the only remaining differentiator. How deeply and how continuously do you understand your users become the only thing that matters. And so for that purpose, I think we're going to see much stronger learning muscle for organization moving forward. And that's why it's so exciting to me in the research space right now, is that the value of research expanding dramatically.
Agree, disagree?
It depends on the day. Yesterday, I felt like it was underhyped. Today, maybe different. No, I'm kind of kidding, but so I've lived through multiple, so-called revolutions and crises, right? From the dot-com years in the 90s, the bubble burst in the early 2000s, and then the financial crisis of 2008, the mobile, the cloud revolution, the crypto revolution, the, of course, remote revolution. And so I tend to be a little careful when it comes to new technologies that are changing the world, and we're all going to be different and stuff. However, in this case, the more I spend time on trying to understand AI, the more I understand that, yeah, it's really fundamental because of, the capabilities. Like we saw this morning, I mean, Ben was presenting some pretty magical stuff, magic product, right, as he calls it. So I feel like, look, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows how crazy things are going to get, and how, whether we're not really taking it seriously enough or not. But what I can say is that when you apply it to our markets, there's certainly disruption or potential for optimization and disruption in multiple areas, whether it's, I mean, for me, the obvious one is the analysis, right? When you have so much data, and that's the biggest pain for most users, is to spend time analyzing and really making sense of the data. So I welcome this technology. I really want to see. We started UserZoom hoping or with this objective of automating and making it all scalable, but you still needed to spend quite a bit of time. Yeah. And so, that, I guess my answer would be, I think I can't say if it's underhyped or overhyped, but there's certainly a lot of potential in our space.
Right, maybe building on that point. AI is probably going to have impacts up and down the value chain, everything from how you contact and recruit your users, possibly the agents that talk to the users, the synthesis, as Alfonso was just saying. Where do you think the greatest impact is going to be for Sprig and for the ecosystem in general on all these AI innovations?
At Sprig, we made a bet very early on, and really, for me to really bring the company to market, I really wanted to see, can we solve two key problems? The first one is, can we collect in-context quantitative research data with very targeted SDKs that integrate into the product development lifecycle and into the products that we use every day? The second one is, can we really summarize and really understand and do open text coding in the same way of an expert user researcher? And so this was in 2019. We really tested out and said, this is not really a company worth building if we cannot solve both of these problems in unique and compelling ways. And so our head of AI actually co-founded the company with me. And we've been working in AI since 2019, and so we made a very early bet into the AI field, and now AI is integrated across the product here at Sprig. And we've always seen synthesis and analysis as really the starting point for how we can incorporate AI and accelerate our work as researchers and product builders. And so we've really made a very concerted bet that unstructured data and AI, it's now really the time to apply this new technology in interesting ways to accelerate the work of researchers. And we now have companies collecting over 1 million responses in a single survey, and AI is now able to do the same work at a very close level of an expert user researcher with about 95 to 99% accuracy across over 1 million responses in a single survey. And I think as we learn and experience how to incorporate AI, it's going to move up the process and really accelerate all aspects of research, not only from synthesis and analysis, but also to around delivering the research and also really administering and initiating the research process as well. And so I think it's going to start to move up the value chain, but right now we're seeing a lot of focus, as we saw today with Dovetail, on the analysis piece.
Jonathan, it was a question I was hoping to ask is, when I started out in marketing, again, this is a long time ago, most of the research projects were like invasions of a major continent. They took 6 months to set up or longer. They would run for 6 months. It would take 3 months for the market research department to summarize the results. And now there's a continuum of, I still think there are probably big invasion projects, and then there are sort of periodic quarterly things. And then I think a lot of these attendees and many of your clients are probably doing continuous research. Like, what is the portfolio or mixture of how you see your customers using your product? Is it big invasion projects or day-to-day?
It's a mix of both. It really depends on who's the user of the platform. Because we have a platform where the common denominator is the person with the lowest maturity in the organization. The goal is for them to be able to autonomously capture, make sense of those insights without having to have a PhD in anthropology to make sense of the data. But that being said, we also have professional researchers using the platform that run these extensive and long projects to be able to capture more in-depth insights. I think it's something that we're seeing as a trend across all the personas, no matter if they're designers, product managers, is that speed remains one of the most significant things that people are trying to drive with research today. And it's just research lives by the product cycle, right? And so the reality is that as product cycles accelerate again and again, you're going to see more and more focus for research to be able to go at least at the speed at which product is being developed. And so we're seeing a lot of focus on how can we get better leverage and better automation across the entire spectrum of research, for hiring people, to creating the studies, to running the studies, to analyzing the data, creating the reports, sharing them, creating influence in the organization. All of these things individually can be mostly automated. And so what we're seeing is a shift of the role of the researcher from historically an operator to then an educator. So in the past 5 years, we've seen a lot of them trying to scale their practice, getting more designers to do the research. And now almost an orchestrator, right, where you're working both with the agents and the systems, but also with the people running those systems. And so that expert in the loop role is, I think, the shape of the new researchers of tomorrow.
Do you think that ultimately that means your products, maybe asking you the same question, Ryan, is still primarily being used by the researcher, or is it expanding to the product group, or is it being used by general business people outside the product group? Maybe you speak to that. And
I think the vision is for everyone to be able to run research. So
what is it today, though, would you say?
Today, what we see a lot of, 15% of our user base are researchers, and the rest are designers, product managers, and product marketers. So anyone that has to make a decision throughout the product development process, from what should we build, how should we design it, what is the value proposition of that product, all of these things can be tested through the platform. But I think the goal of research is to be able to be run by anyone. So when I was a researcher, one of my hot takes was no one cares about research. And what I mean by that is no one cares about the methods or the tools or the statistical significance. When I had a stakeholder come to me and say, Joe, should we build a banking app for teenagers in France? They cared about the answer to that question. The more abstraction as software we can create between business question to being able to answer those questions autonomously, the more likely we are that we create user fluency and scalable empathy in the organization. I think that's what we're trying to drive.
Yeah.
Ryan, same question to you.
Yeah, so for us, maybe just because we're in the quantitative space and it is a little bit more technical, is that the people conducting the surveys and conducting the research are researchers. And we do think that it's critical that, just like an engineer is, even if they're using Cursor to develop, it's not, I'm not using Cursor writing code for Sprig. We have expert engineers actually using tools to accelerate their work. And here at Sprig, we see it no different, where the AI is really accelerating the work of the researcher. But one of the key things that we brought to market in 2019 was unlimited seats for all of our customers and all of our plans. And we have a customer with over 1,000 seats. And what that really enables is that the researchers are conducting the research, they're conducting the insights, but they're bringing in the product managers and designers and executive teams into Sprig to really consume the insights, to consume the data. And so when we think around democratization, from our perspective, we don't see it as the designers and product managers conducting the research, but actually being a part of that consumption process and being able to really explore and really evaluate the data on their own and have AI to really help them draw conclusions and really make decisions and take action from the data that's being collected and conducted by the research teams.
Alfonso, related to this, I'll ask a career advice question for myself and for a lot of people in this audience. If you're a developer, there's a lot changing, right? You have Cursor, you have Copilot, you have all the vibe coding tools that are developing. In some ways, that could be an opportunity. It can also be a threat from a career perspective in terms of how your skills need to change. You move into the world that we live in today, and you move into the world of research, there's all this AI innovation happening. Obviously, that can impact the nature of all of our careers that are in this space. What would your advice be as someone who's been around a while, like perhaps myself, in terms of what you would do to be both on the cutting edge of what's happening in this AI space, and how do you prepare yourself for the next 10 to 15 years?
I think two things that you can do. One is clearly there's a ton of resources to understand AI and how AI can be applied to different products and different moments, different use cases. Just search it up. On LinkedIn, there's absolutely packed with free courses on AI. And I have to say that I started with a few, but I got a long list to go. I think we all need to understand AI. It's just, I think it was Jensen, NVIDIA's CEO, that said, if you're not necessarily an expert in AI, at least learn how to use it, right? And so it kind of reminds me of the World Wide Web back in the day when you had to learn how to use the navigator or the Netscape navigator or the browser, right? So I think we all need to do that regardless of your position, but certainly if you're a developer or designer and a lot of the work is going to be done by an agent. But I always advised as well, beyond AI, I always advised the product people, whether it was not so much product managers, you'll see why, but certainly designers, researchers, and developers, to learn more about business and business KPIs and what the board cares about in companies, whether it's your customers or even your own company. Because it's funny because I was the founder and CEO for many years. We grew up quite a bit, and we had investors, and we had board meetings, and it became kind of complicated. And so I had my own, product roadmap and CPO and CTO, and I would ask for stuff, and then it became this huge business where, why would we make decisions one way or another? And a lot of times, I actually would walk over to the, for instance, Barcelona office, and I would say, hey guys, do you know what the retention rate, what the gross retention rate is for UserZoom? Yeah. As a SaaS business, you being Accel and an investor, you know how huge that retention rate is for a SaaS business, right? And many of the developers had no clue of what the retention rates were. And so I know it might sound a little, different, I guess, but my take is, I think this industry, the UX, the product, design, research, would benefit tremendously from being able to speak the business language, because it takes a village, and you just can't operate in silos. We have to work as a team, and I think if you do that, I found that you're closer to the C-level execs, you're closer to getting budget, you're closer to working and being heard, which is what a lot of UXers want, right? So those are my two advices, I guess.
Either you guys have things to add related to good advice for people in the audience on this topic?
I think the soft skills are more important than ever in that new world as well, whereas in the past, the purity of the practice was the thing that a lot of the researchers were focusing on. As those things become mostly automated, the thing that will differentiate great researchers from the rest, the capacity for you to be able to educate the rest of the organization and also build influence, right? And that was always a skill set that was critical. There's nothing worse than research that dies in a PDF, right? And so the goal now for the researchers of tomorrow, I think, is to be able to create collaboration, cross-collaboration across teams, help people drive research. We have great examples in our customer base of people that create ritual around education so that designers, PMs are all empowered to run more research on their own, and then build that influence with the execs as well. So understanding how to talk the business language, how to surface insights in a way that people can and want to consume. I think those are the skills that will matter in a world where the practice itself becomes less, mostly automated.
Great.
Yeah. In talking to researchers and designers, one of the things that we often hear is how will AI replace the work that they do? What will that reduce the team size? Will that have an impact on the impact of this field? And one of the things that we've seen is that the research teams are able to stay ahead by thinking about the business impact. And I think AI is really a technology to really deliver far more impact than before AI was really a part of our toolkits. And so if you see AI as a way to accelerate your impact, it's how can you really align the work that you're doing towards the business. And one of the key things that we've seen for many of the customers that we work with is their research teams are really making sure they're not being sometimes a product manager comes to them and said, hey, what color should the button be? Is that really going to be a high-impact business decision? Or is that a product manager or designer who doesn't want to make a decision themselves? And how can research teams really look at what are the quarterly objectives? What is the CEO really focused on this quarter or this year? How can we think about expanding to new markets? How can we think about bringing new product ideas and validating or invalidating new product ideas that are really being explored right now? What are the conversion rates or the business metrics around onboarding conversion or sign-up conversion or customer churn right now? And how can you really move the needle for these critical business metrics that overall will deliver higher revenue performance for the company? And so if you think about AI as a technology that allows you to really increase your impact, can you align the work that you're doing with whether it's a product goal or a business goal or an overall business objective? It's really going to allow your team to have far greater impact with AI and then really expand your team because that impact is only growing and more transformational for the business.
Despite the fact that I talk about it as a bit of a threat, the reality is I think there's incredible upside and opportunity here. I mean, the reality is I sit maybe in more board meetings than I want to over this past 20 years, and I'd say 90% of the board meetings there isn't a data-based argument for why a product roadmap is the way it's asserted or why the investment in initiatives are the way they're asserted. All of us that work in technology, you've never met a non-confident head of product or a non-confident head of engineering. Everybody pretty much assumes they're the smartest person in the room and probably the smartest person in the zip code. So they're often like, I'm confident that this is the direction, but oftentimes when you ask them the question, how much justification or research has gone into it, I would say the backup is only there maybe a third of the time. Now, sometimes the intuition is right, and sometimes we back founders that don't yet have all the data, but we still fund them for their intuition. But I think there's so much more uncaptured opportunity in the world that we live in, because a good percentage of those intuitions are wrong, as well. I just wanted to ask you all a question around who does this the best? Who flies the plane to the best limit of what its capabilities are? And so who do you think in this new era is doing a great job with this type of research and able to demonstrate business results or impact from us?
You're talking like brands, right?
Brands, customers, yes.
I mean, the usual suspects in my mind, from the Amazons that had, like Ben showed, a seat for the customer right there in the board. I can tell you what I've seen, in the last few years, because it's hard to say who's the best. There are great ones at different, verticals, whether it's healthcare or banks. You can really tell right away when you're, for instance, registering for the first time, who has worked and thought about the user before they become a customer, by the way. I always like to differentiate user experience versus customer experience, and we can talk about that for a while. But the point is, you can really tell who, to me, it's about culture. Ultimately, we can have phenomenal tools, we can have phenomenal participants, AI, technology, and what I found is, everyone, all these corporations, let's say Fortune 500 companies or beyond, Fortune 5000, they have access and they have budget and they have the people and the talent. It's not like they have some, specific IP that, no one else has. They all have that. But who actually highlights or let's say leverages and uses great experience as a competitive advantage? And ultimately, again, it's not about tools, it's not about talent, it's about culture. I think those C-level executives that truly understand that the customer is driving the car, driving the bus, and they're going to make decisions based on whatever feedback they get. Yeah. And they're going to put together teams, processes, ways of building software that embeds user research, testing from the very beginning, design, during the development, post-launch, and they're just going to have it constantly, like to your point earlier, continuously moving, yielding insights and making decisions based on those. And then they're going to hold accountable. They're going to hold the leaders, such as, for instance, the CPOs or the CTOs or design leaders, accountable for that work and those investments. And they're going to link, and I'll be quiet, sorry, I'm talking too much, but it's my favorite topic, to be honest. It's like how you link research and insights and great UX to business metrics. And they're going to be able to link all this work, all these things they're doing to business performance, like retention or higher sales or less customer calls or a more efficient customer center, customer service center or bot or things like that. There's a long list of business metrics. So
thank you. Ron, why don't you build on that? How do you educate your customers on how to build a research-centric or UX design-centric culture? And then the original question of what's the best case study you've seen?
Yeah. It's exciting, getting to see firsthand research teams like Figma, Coinbase, DoorDash, Ramp, build and grow their research practices. And one of the false dichotomies we often hear about research is that it slows down product development. And maybe that VP of product is presenting that roadmap, and they've maybe had research with some of the items but not the others, and their counterpoint is going to be, well, we don't have time, or we don't have enough resources. And the best research teams that we see is that they're able to inject research at the highest impact moments in the product development process, and it doesn't have any impact into the product development team's velocity. And so it's not a decision between should we slow down the process or do research. It's we're going to move really fast. We're going to ramp ship 200 new features last year. We're going to move at the same velocity that we would without research, but we're going to inject research at the right moment to have an impact on the key decisions for this new feature or for this new product that we're bringing to market. And we're on the quantitative research side, really in context, so I can speak to some of the examples that we've seen. But one of our customers, Dropbox, for every new feature that they launch, they do a feature flag, and also they do A/B tests. And traditionally, product teams will use A/B testing and feature flag software to really test the business metrics. So is there a positive business outcome for this new change or this new feature that we're rolling out? But we're seeing the best research teams also incorporate in-product surveys, with Sprig and other tools to actually measure the experience data as well. And can you actually have a positive user experience for that user change or that design or that new feature that you're rolling out, and also drive a positive business impact? And that user experience is going to be the leading indicator for long-term business impact, where the business metric for that A/B test, that outcome, will be really the short-term impact. Are you reducing conversion, or are you increasing conversion? Are you reducing churn? Are you driving overall business progress? And so another example we see is many of the best teams, every time they launch a new beta or alpha, they're also having questions like feature market fit. Instead of product market fit, they're measuring feature market fit. How disappointed would our customers be if we could no longer use this feature? And really testing about, how do we really quantify and measure these experiences? And the third example that we see is, I'm sure everyone's ready for the next iteration of NPS. And what we're seeing is many companies move from a single experience score of Net Promoter Score to what they call critical user journeys. And so taking the 8 to 10 critical user journeys about, Robinhood making a trade or depositing funds, or it could be around creating their new account or trying a new feature for the first time, and measuring on a longitudinal basis of 1% to 2% of the throughput, what are users saying on a quantifiable basis about this critical user journey? Thing was another example where they have Sprig surveys instrumented throughout all their critical user journeys, and it's really giving them confidence as they're making progress with their product. Are we moving each experience forward in a positive direction today versus yesterday? And if true, then we're delivering a better experience for our customers.
Can I say something?
Please, yeah, go ahead.
Am I the only one that thinks that research actually accelerates, makes it faster than slower? Maybe I'm the only crazy one. Anyone thinks that's the case? Research doesn't slow product design development. It actually speeds it up.
It does.
It's not that many hands, guys. Come on. Why? Because, come on, if you can do research constantly rather than just one time, this one, conquering the whole, country or whatever, you avoid mistakes. There's no way a designer and developer is going to get it right. Once you get into the trenches, once you start building all these prototypes and you have to make decisions, you're going to make the wrong decisions. If you can stop a team from doing 2 to 3, 4 months sometimes of development, thanks to an insight, you're actually speeding the process. The question is, do we understand that? Do we think like that when we build software versus thinking that, oh, you're stopping me from making decisions? Stop being so arrogant, right?
Yeah.
All right, Jonathan, I'm going to hit you with the tough question, which is everybody here in the room needs to go get budget. Everyone's got to justify all the great tools that we all represent and all the other working dollars as well to go do the research. What are the best techniques to convince maybe cynical management or maybe an irritating board of venture capitalists or something to make sure that people are investing properly in this space? So what are the best techniques?
It's really hard, right? I think part of what makes research so hard is that the ROI of research often lives in the negative space, right? It lives in the things you didn't build. It lives in the products you didn't launch because you learned early that you shouldn't build those things. And so, well, it's in an ideal world, we can always connect the research to the business impact. The reality is that it's not often a straight line, right? Like it's not often yeah, we did the research and so we built this and so it was successful. It lives in those things that we didn't execute against. And so what we've seen being very successful as a strategy is to start small and to celebrate and to ritualize the success of starting small. And so the best researchers that we see, what they do is they start with the smallest project where they see they can drive impact. And so they go hard on that project and they report broadly, right? They try to ritualize the empathy that they create with customers. And so they get that success, they make it a ritual, they share it with the organization, and then they repeat that. That is the best way to start creating a culture that celebrates outcome over output. And I think you talked about culture a lot, and I think for me, it all comes down to this, right? It all comes down to this idea of, is your organization trying to push things to market, or is your organization trying to solve something for a user, right? And those two things are very different. The best cultures, they celebrate failing early. They celebrate not pushing this thing to market. The worst cultures, they celebrate the checkbox, right? They're like, oh, we did everything correctly. We went through the whole process, and then we pushed something to market that no one cared about. And so ultimately, I think what you really need to drive is the capacity for you to present your success and broadcast your success to the organization. Start small, and then expand so then you can justify headcount and budget.
Agree, disagree?
Sorry, go ahead.
I guess going back to the question, yeah, I'll pass, yeah.
Sorry, what was the question again?
I was just agree, in terms of how do you convince an organization to fund research properly?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
What are the best suggestions or techniques to try to convince maybe a skeptical management or a skeptical board of the
Well, I mean,
importance
with the automation we have, and obviously we saw the demonstration this morning from Ben and the team on how fast you can actually get to a response of a question that you may have when you're designing or developing something. There's no excuse. I think, look, when I was saying earlier that research can actually speed the process, I understand that that's a hard one to really swallow and to understand but the fact is, to me, the fact that you can get it so quickly. Now, it's really important that speed doesn't overcome or doesn't get ahead of accuracy, right? So I've always been a very big believer that bad data is worse than no data. And so let's pause there and think, hey, speed is great, but let's make sure we get the right data. But having said that, today you have the tools and you have the technology to allow for that speed. So there's really no excuse. I think it's more a matter of, we do have to do some selling in this industry, right? We have to show them examples, have to show them the before and after. This is what, it's a little complicated, but that's what I would do.
Yeah. Well, I just would finish where we started, which is that to say, I really feel like this is a renaissance time for this industry that we're in. There are, when we step back, from a venture capital perspective, there's sort of three categories that we think are clearly going to be impacted first through AI. Coding is one of the obvious areas. We've all heard about Cursor and Copilot and the rest of it. Customer support, we have a company called Decagon, and there's a bunch of other customer support companies. And I think research is the third, and there will be many other categories that are impacted, but I think these are areas where we're seeing the most direct, immediate ROI for the type of software investments that companies can make. Please join me in saying thank you to this excellent group of founders and entrepreneurs and panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.